Justice lead, Donald Trump launching new unhinged attacks on special counsel Jack Smith, the prosecutor who's charged him with 31 federal crimes, including mishandling classified documents and obstruction of justice. Joining us now to discuss, Republican presidential candidate and former New Jersey Governor Christie. And Governor, you served, as you well know, as U.S. Attorney for New Jersey. On his Truth Social website, Mr. Trump is now calling special counsel Jack Smith a, quote, deranged man who, quote, looks like a crackhead. Beyond the propriety of that, from a legal point of view, do statements like that affect the case?
No, I mean, not really. I think, the only argument you could make is that it potentially affects a jury pool who's in South Florida reading this stuff and thinking, what the hell is he talking about? I did a lot of drug cases when I was U.S. Attorney in New Jersey. I can guarantee people that there isn't one particular type of crackhead. There's not anyone who looks like a crackhead necessarily. Look, this is just what makes Donald Trump an unacceptable nominee for our party, because he says things like this without any regard for truth or falsity, without any regard for the propriety of it. But even worse yet, what does that do to help anyone other than him? My argument all along has been this race in 2024 for Donald Trump is all about Donald Trump. It's not about the American people. He doesn't give a damn about the American people. Sources
say both Trump and his indicted aide, Walt Nauta, who appeared in court today, are convinced they should take their cases to trial. Their hope is for an acquittal because there will be a jury pool from South Florida. Florida is a state that Trump won. All you need is one juror. What do you make of that strategy?
Look, it's a real roll of the dice, because what happens then when you know you're guilty, and my suspicion is that Donald Trump knows he's guilty, you go and you take a case to trial, there will then be a presumption of jail time. And basically the way most U.S. attorneys' offices handle that is, if you plead, we can work with you in terms of whether you have to go to jail or not on some of the charges that he's talking about here. If you make the case go to trial, if you force us to go and put the witnesses on the stand and the judge to take the time and the jury to take the time, and you're prosecuted and convicted, then it's almost certain that you would face jail. And so it's a huge roll of the dice for both of these guys to do that. And I think that's a lot of bluster right now. I think as this case gets closer, they may think differently. And on the jury, I think it's horrible to say that about a jury anywhere. Look, I was in New Jersey, one of the bluest states in America, right?
Yeah.
But I never found a jury, and we did 130 political corruption cases during my 7 years. I never found a jury, Jake, that was focused on politics.
Because you weed them out during voir dire?
Part of it. Yeah. But also part of it is when they take that oath and they sit in one of those grand federal courtrooms, I found that most citizens take that responsibility really seriously. And even if they have certain points of view or prejudices, we all do, they really take it seriously when the judge says you have to put that aside and judge this only based on the facts that are presented here in this courtroom. And I found that jurors that I ran into for 7 years as U.S. attorney, I never saw one of them make what I thought was a political judgment. So they may be overestimating that as well.
So one of the questions that I've had throughout this classified documents case is why? Why did he do this? And I've asked a lot of people who know Donald Trump well why they think it is. You obviously know Donald Trump well. Here are a couple theories I asked of former Secretary of Defense under Trump, Mark Esper. I want to get your reaction after this. I've heard two different theories as to why he had these documents. One from Stephanie Grisham, who said he just likes, these are mine, and he's like a child with a toy. And one from Michael Cohen. He said he thought that Trump had these documents because he wanted to use them to further his own power or financial well-being in some way. Why do you think he held on to these documents and went to such lengths to stop them, to prevent them from being turned over to the government?
Yeah, look, I think both theories could be true and likely are true to some extent.
I have to admit, I was kind of surprised that Esper said that because the idea that he would use these secrets to further his own power or financial well-being is a shocking thing for him to think. What do you think?
I think it was purely ego. I think, Jake, he could not and still cannot to this day deal with the fact that he's the only person outside the state of Delaware to ever lose to Joe Biden. And he wants to pretend he's still president. He takes these boxes with him. Like, He flies them up. They're in New Jersey now, if he still had them. They'd be in New Jersey because they go on summer vacation with him. I mean, he wanted to continue to pretend he was president and show these things to people and say, look what I still have. Look what I still know.
Oh, so it's all part of the kabuki about people telling him, oh, you're still president, you actually won, that whole thing.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's it. And I will tell you that I've seen him with, it's not the first time also with boxes of documents. In 2016, when I was campaigning with him, his body guy at the time, Keith Schiller, would have a box, a banker's box of documents that would go everywhere with him when he was campaigning. And whenever he got on the plane, he would put that box of documents right next to Donald Trump on the plane. He would open them. Now, those documents were from Trump Tower and were business related and also newspaper articles, whatever. And he wanted that box next to him immediately before we took off. So they're talking about the beautiful mind documents that the staff is talking about. He was obsessed about it. There's an element to that as well, and I saw it going all the way back to 2016.
I want to ask you about what's happening in Ukraine right now because you're running to be commander-in-chief, obviously, and your fellow Republican contender Mike Pence said on the Hugh Hewitt show yesterday that if Ukraine is defeated in the war, the U.S. will ultimately, he fears, have to send troops to fight Russia's further aggression. He seemed to be suggesting that Russia would go and the U.S. would need to defend fellow NATO allies, which is required by charter. Do you agree?
Look, I don't think that's necessarily true. But what I do think is that this has huge geopolitical implications, Jake. We have to make sure that we send a very clear message, not only to Russia, but quite frankly, they're my third concern in this trifecta. China and Iran. China and Iran are both actively supporting Russia in this effort with both military hardware and cash to support Russia's effort in Ukraine.
Those Iranian drones, for example.
Iranian drones are killing civilians every week in Ukraine. And if we do not stand with Ukraine and help them to win this war, the message that it sends to Iran is they can do whatever they want to do in the Middle East, including vis-a-vis Israel. It will change the way Saudi Arabia has to conduct itself in the Middle East because of freeing Iran up to do these things. And China will be looking voraciously at Taiwan. This is already a proxy war with China and Iran. We have to win that proxy war. Quite frankly, Russia's my third concern in all this.
Very interesting. I also want to ask you about the man accused of carrying weapons outside the Obama family's Washington, D.C. home. We have the social media post from Donald Trump that prosecutors say that man used to find the address. Governor Christie, stay with me. We're going to get right into that after this quick break. What do you make of this? I mean, just empirically, President Trump put out in the world Barack Obama's home address, and a Trump superfan with guns and a machete took that address, according to prosecutors, and went to the Obama's house, and according to prosecutors, to wreak havoc.
Well, first of all, for Mr. Taranto, this seems to be a pattern that's now developing, involved in January 6th and now involved in this. And as for Donald Trump, I think the problem, again, is his conduct, which has no regard for anyone other than himself. Now, I don't know whether he really meant to put President Obama's address out there or not, or whether he was just so enamored with the newsletters, extolling of his first 100 days, when, by the way, he fired former General Mike Flynn in the first 17 days as National Security Advisor and had a Muslim ban that didn't go into effect and a number of other things. So I don't know exactly what was in that first 100-day recitation, but my guess is he loved it so much he wanted to put it up there. But this is the problem with someone who doesn't think about this country and its citizens first. They wind up doing things like this, whether it was intentional or inadvertent. What it shows is a lack of responsibility, a lack of accountability for what you're saying. It's like calling the special counsel a crackhead. It's like putting out a former president's address. It is irresponsible conduct. And what I say to everybody who says, well, he's treated unfairly, the documents case he brought on himself by refusing to give them back for 18 months after he was asked to do it.
Yeah, all the charges suggest, sorry to interrupt, but all the charges suggest that if he'd turned them over, he wouldn't have been charged with anything.
He would never have been charged. I can guarantee you, as someone who did this for a living for 7 years, if at any point prior to the search he had just voluntarily given them back, they would have walked away. All they wanted were the documents back. They weren't looking to bring a case against Donald Trump, but he cannot help himself. And so these are the things he needs to be confronted with. And that's why, in the race, Jake, why I think it's so important that we have these debates. why it's so important that he show up at the debates and the RNC to make sure they do it.
He's talking about not showing up. You bring that up because the next debate is next month. It's scheduled to be next month. Fox is doing it. And Trump has said that why would he even show up? He's so ahead in the polls. Everyone's just going to be attacking him. Why even go?
He should show up because he owes it to the Republican Party and the voters of the Republican Party to stand up and defend his record. And if he thinks his record is so great, if those first 100 days are so laudable and everything he did is so defensible, well, then he should have no worries. Because if everything you did was correct, which is what he says, perfect, I think is the word he uses most of the time, then somebody like me or Mike Pence or Tim Scott or Nikki Haley will not be able to lay a glove on him during a debate. It's nothing they should be worried about. But people should go to chrischristie.com, donate to me, make sure I'm on that stage, because if I am, I'll raise those issues right to the president's face.
Was January 6th and the build-up to it, the lies, was that the end of it for you? Because I just wonder, in an alternate universe where Donald Trump accepts his loss to Joe Biden in 2020, spends the next, whatever he has, month and a half, talking about the Abraham Accords, talking about Operation Warp Speed, which brought the vaccines, et cetera, and goes out with dignity. Again, and that's not what happened, and It's hard to imagine. But if he had done that, would he right now be cruising to the nomination with nobody challenging him? Really,
it would be a much harder proposition. And to me, Jake, it was election night. When you stand behind the seal of the President of the United States in the East Room of the White House and tell the American people that the election had been stolen, when you have no evidence to support that, just to assuage your own ego and your feelings of loss, to me, that's when it was over. You cannot undercut our democracy in that way. And then everything he did thereafter led to January 6th. But January 6th started that night. If he had not said those things that night and continued to say them for the next 70 days, I absolutely believe we wouldn't have had January 6th.
In the time we have remaining, we obviously know that you are against Donald Trump getting the nomination. Tell us more about what you're running for, what you want to achieve.
Well, Jake, look, I want this country to do big things again. When you think about just the stuff we've been talking about today, this is such small bore stuff with the exception of Ukraine. It is such small things that they're dividing us and all the different things that are being put out there by Governor DeSantis and others, small issues. I want to stop the runaway inflation that we have in this country and get spending under control again in Washington, D.C. I want to absolutely revolutionize the educational system. We saw the test results nationwide that came out last week. Our children continue to do worse and worse compared to the rest of the world. They deserve better, and we spend so much money, we should get better. We need to revolutionize school choice in this country. We need to make sure that we bring our allies together around the world to improve everyone's economy, to improve our military strength, and to improve freedom around the world. Those are the big things that we've been fighting for over our entire existence as a country. And coming off July 4th, we should remember that when our leaders chose the big things at the Revolution, the Civil War, World War II, and the evil empire, the Soviet Union and Ronald Reagan, every time we made sacrifices to go big, our country came out bigger, stronger, more influential, and freer. That's why I want to be president.
Governor Chris Christie, good to see you again. Thanks for stopping by the studio. We appreciate it.